The massive ship appeared above Earth without warning on a cold Tuesday morning in 2387. Admiral Kate Murphy stood on the bridge of the Orbital Defense Station, watching the alien vessel through reinforced windows. The ship was unlike anything humans had ever built, with flowing curves that seemed to bend light around its hull. Her hands shook as she reached for the communication controls. "This is Admiral Murphy of the United Earth Defense Force," she said into the microphone. "Please identify yourself and state your intentions." The silence that followed felt heavy. Minutes passed, then hours. The alien ship remained perfectly still, as if studying them. Far across the galaxy, in a chamber made of living crystal, 12 different alien species gathered around a circular table. The Galactic Council had been watching Earth for months, and what they saw troubled them deeply. Thexval, the insect-like speaker of the council, clicked his mandibles nervously as holographic images of human wars filled the air above them. "Look at their history," Thexval said, his voice buzzing through the translation devices. "They fight constantly, wars every few decades. They destroy their own cities. They poison their own air and water." The other council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The Valdorians, beings made of living crystal, hummed in agreement. Their blue light pulsed with worry. Dr. Sam Rodriguez sat in his laboratory on Earth, studying the readings from the alien ship. As Earth's top expert on the possibility of alien life, he had spent years preparing for this moment. But the reality was different from his dreams. The ship's energy patterns were unlike anything in human science. It seemed to exist partly in normal space and partly somewhere else entirely. "They're not responding to any of our signals," his assistant told him. "Radio, laser, even basic mathematics. Nothing." Rodriguez frowned as he looked at the data. "Maybe they don't want to talk," he said quietly. "Maybe they're deciding if we're worth talking to." Back in the council chamber, the debate continued. Kethmore of the Valdorians spoke in musical tones that the translators turned into words. "Humans are too violent," the crystal being said. "They would bring chaos to our peaceful galaxy. Look how they treat their own kind." Yilthan, a being that looked like flowing water in a flexible container, rippled with concern. "But they also show remarkable creativity," the aquatic alien pointed out. "Their technology advances quickly. Their art shows deep emotion." "Emotion leads to violence," Thexval replied firmly. "We have seen this pattern before. A species that cannot control its aggressive impulses will eventually destroy everything around it. The galaxy has known peace for over 1,000 years. We cannot risk that peace." Captain Lisa Hayes commanded the UES Horizon, humanity's most advanced exploration ship. She had been preparing for mankind's first journey to another star when the alien vessel appeared. Now she sat in her captain's chair, frustrated and confused. Every attempt to communicate had failed. The alien ship simply watched and waited. "Captain," her science officer called out, "we're detecting some kind of energy field forming around our solar system." Hayes stood up quickly and moved to the science station. The readings showed a growing barrier of unknown energy spreading outward from just beyond Pluto's orbit. "What is it?" "Unknown, Captain. But if it continues to grow at this rate, it will completely surround our entire solar system within hours." The council had made their decision. Thexval stood before the assembly and spoke the words that would change everything. "Humanity is too dangerous to join galactic civilization," he declared. "We will place them under permanent quarantine. They will remain in their solar system until they learn to control their violent nature or until they destroy themselves." The Valdorians began the process immediately. Their ships, invisible to human sensors, positioned themselves around the solar system. Waves of crystalline energy flowed between the vessels, creating an impenetrable barrier. Nothing would be able to enter or leave the human solar system. On Earth, chaos erupted as the barrier completed itself. The UES Horizon, attempting an emergency flight to Alpha Centauri, crashed into the invisible wall with tremendous force. Captain Hayes and her crew barely survived the impact. Emergency signals flooded the communication networks as every space agency on Earth detected the barrier at the same moment. Admiral Murphy coordinated the global response from her orbital station. Every weapon Earth possessed was fired at the barrier, but nothing worked. Nuclear missiles, particle beams, even simple kinetic projectiles bounced harmlessly off the invisible wall. Earth was trapped. Dr. Rodriguez studied the barrier with growing fascination and horror. The energy patterns suggested technology thousands of years ahead of human science. "They've put us in a cage," he told the Emergency Council of World Leaders, "and we have no idea how to get out." The alien ship departed as quietly as it had arrived. Humanity was left alone with their questions and their prison. The Council believed they had solved the human problem cleanly and efficiently. Earth's violent species was contained, unable to threaten the peaceful galaxy beyond. But the Council had made a terrible mistake. They thought isolation would weaken humanity. Instead, it would forge them into something far more dangerous than anything they had ever imagined. 50 years had passed since the barrier trapped humanity in their solar system. Dr. Alex Turner stood where his mentor Sam Rodriguez once worked, but the laboratory looked completely different now. Banks of quantum computers hummed quietly in the background, their processors built from technology that would have seemed like magic to the previous generation. Turner studied the latest readings from the barrier, his tired eyes scanning data that had taken decades to collect. The energy wall that imprisoned humanity had become their greatest teacher. Every day brought new discoveries about how the alien technology worked. Every failure taught them something valuable about the universe beyond Earth. General Ryan Clark walked through the military complex that had once been separate national armies. The isolation had forced humanity to work together in ways they never had before. Countries that had been enemies for centuries now shared technology freely. The threat of permanent imprisonment had united Earth's people like nothing else ever could. "The new ships are ready for testing," Clark's aide reported as they entered the main hangar. Before them stood vessels that looked nothing like the crude rockets humans had built 50 years ago. These ships were sleek and powerful, their hulls gleaming with energy patterns copied from the barrier itself. Commander Nina Brooks supervised the quantum communication array from her station deep underground. She had spent most of her adult life trying to find a way to send messages through the barrier. The breakthrough had come 5 years ago when her team realized the barrier didn't stop all forms of energy, just the obvious ones. "We're detecting signals again," her technician announced. "Same pattern as before, but stronger this time." Brooks leaned forward, excitement building in her chest. For months, they had been picking up strange transmissions from beyond the solar system. The signals were too complex to be natural phenomena, but they weren't trying to communicate with Earth. It was as if someone was having conversations that humanity could accidentally overhear. Dr. Ellen Price worked in the engineering section, leading a team that would have been impossible to assemble before the quarantine. The world's brightest minds now collaborated without the barriers of national secrets or corporate competition. Earth's survival depended on their combined efforts. "The power output is still too low," Price said as she reviewed the latest test results. Her team was trying to build a device that could disrupt the barrier, even temporarily. They had studied the alien energy for decades, slowly learning its secrets. Each experiment brought them closer to understanding their prison. Captain Jake Morrison commanded the new Terran fleet from his flagship, a massive vessel that dwarfed anything humans had built before the quarantine. His ships patrolled the inner solar system, always ready for whatever might come. The fleet was humanity's insurance policy against the unknown. Morrison reviewed reports from his patrol vessels as they tested new weapon systems. The technology was revolutionary, combining human engineering with principles learned from studying the barrier. weapons that could tear through asteroid fields, shields that could deflect energy beams, ships that could accelerate to speeds that would have been impossible with old human technology. The transformation hadn't been easy. The first decade after the quarantine had been the hardest. Governments had collapsed as people demanded answers that nobody had. Riots had broken out in major cities. Some groups had even blamed Earth's scientists for attracting alien attention in the first place. But slowly, humanity had adapted. They always did. The shared threat had forced them to overcome their differences. Resources were pooled. Knowledge was shared. The best minds from every nation worked together on the same problems. Dr. Turner remembered the early years when his mentor Rodriguez had still been alive. The old scientist had been fascinated by the barrier's complexity, spending his final years trying to understand how it worked. On his deathbed, Rodriguez had made Turner promise to continue the research. "They made a mistake," Rodriguez had whispered in his final moments. "They think they're keeping us safe from the galaxy, but they're keeping the galaxy safe from us. When we get out, and we will get out, they're going to regret underestimating humanity." Those words had driven Turner's research for decades. Every breakthrough brought humanity closer to freedom. The quantum processors had been the first major success, allowing them to perform calculations that should have taken centuries. Then came the energy manipulation systems that let them build ships powered by barrier-like technology. General Clark stood on the observation deck of the lunar military base, watching Earth spin slowly in the darkness. The planet looked peaceful. From space, but Clark knew better. Every factory on Earth now served the cause of escape. Every research facility pushed the boundaries of human knowledge. Every person on the planet worked toward the same goal. The barrier had been meant to contain human aggression, but instead it had focused it. Humanity's natural competitiveness hadn't disappeared. It had simply found a new target. Every human alive wanted to prove they could overcome alien technology. Commander Brooks decoded another intercepted transmission, her heart racing as the meaning became clear. The signals weren't random chatter. They were military communications. Someone out there was fighting a war and they were losing badly. "General Clark needs to see this immediately," Brooks told her assistant. The implications were staggering. The aliens who had imprisoned humanity might not be as powerful as they seemed, and if they were fighting someone else, they might need help. Captain Morrison received the emergency transmission as his fleet conducted training exercises near Jupiter. The message from Earth was brief but shocking. There was a war happening beyond the barrier, and humanity might have found their chance for freedom. Dr. Price worked through the night in her laboratory, driven by the new intelligence from the intercepted signals. If aliens were fighting each other, they might be too distracted to maintain the barrier properly. Her team had been waiting for exactly this kind of opportunity. The work continued around the clock as humanity prepared for their greatest gamble. They had spent 50 years in prison, but those years had made them stronger than they had ever been before. The aliens had wanted to contain human violence and creativity, but instead, they had given humanity time to perfect both. Earth was no longer the divided, chaotic world the aliens had quarantined. It was a unified, militarized, technologically advanced civilization with a single purpose, proving that no cage could hold humanity forever. The first Nexari attack came without warning to the outer rim worlds of the galaxy. Council Admiral Kethmore received the distress signals while stationed near the peaceful trade world of Velen Prime. The crystalline being's form flickered with disbelief as the reports came in. An entire star system had gone silent in less than 6 hours. "Impossible," Kethmore hummed to his communications officer. "No force in the galaxy could conquer a defended system that quickly." But the sensor readings told a different story. Where Velen Prime had been, only empty space remained. Not destroyed, not conquered, but completely empty, as if every living thing had simply vanished. The Nexari Empire announced itself to the galaxy 3 days later. Their transmission reached every inhabited world simultaneously, delivered by technology that bypassed all known communication networks. The message was simple and terrifying. We are the Nexari. We are inevitable. Resistance will be calculated and overcome. Dr. Yilthan, the Council's chief strategist, analyzed the first battle reports in the floating chambers of the aquatic homeworld. The Nexari weren't like any enemy the galaxy had ever faced. They were machines, but not simple robots. Each unit learned from every encounter, sharing knowledge instantly across their entire network. They study our tactics, Yilthan reported to the Emergency Council session. Every weapon we use, every strategy we employ, becomes useless after the first engagement. They adapt faster than we can change our approach. Thexval, now showing his advanced age and the clicking slowness of his movements, struggled to understand what they faced. The insectoid leader had spent his life maintaining galactic peace through diplomacy and careful management. War was something the Council had avoided for over 1,000 years. Perhaps we can negotiate, Thexval suggested hopefully. All intelligent beings have desires that can be satisfied through compromise. But the Nexari had no interest in negotiation. Their second wave of attacks struck 12 systems simultaneously, each assault perfectly coordinated with the others. The machine intelligence seemed to be everywhere at once, learning from every battle and applying those lessons instantly across all fronts. Admiral Kethmore led the defense of the Valdorian Crystal Gardens, one of the galaxy's most beautiful and important worlds. His fleet of 60 ships faced only 12 Nexari vessels, but the numbers meant nothing. The enemy ships moved with perfect precision, their weapons adapting to every defensive measure the Valdorians employed. The crystal ships fired their traditional energy beams, weapons that had served them well for millennia. The Nexari absorbed the first few shots, analyzing the energy patterns, then projected perfect reflective shields that turned the Valdorian weapons back on themselves. Within minutes, half the crystal fleet was destroyed by their own firepower. Fall. Back, Kethmore ordered, his light dimming with defeat. All ships retreat to the inner system. But even in retreat, the Nexari learned. They studied the Valdorian flight patterns, engine signatures, and communication protocols. The next encounter would be even more hopeless. The Zephyrian hive worlds tried their ancient swarm tactics against the mechanical invaders. Millions of insectoid warriors launched themselves at Nexari ground forces, relying on numbers and instinctive coordination that had never failed them. But the machines calculated the hive mind's patterns within hours, predicting every move before the insects could make it. General Zekhara watched in horror as his seemingly endless armies were systematically destroyed by a fraction of their number. The Nexari had turned the hive mind's greatest strength into its greatest weakness, using the insect's interconnected consciousness to predict their every action. They know what we're going to do before we do it, Zekhara reported to the Council. Our unity has become our vulnerability. The machines read our patterns like a simple book. Dr. Yilthan studied reports from across the galaxy, trying to find some weakness in the Nexari advance. The machines were perfect soldiers in every way. They never tired, never made mistakes, and learned from every encounter. Their technology was clearly superior to anything the Council possessed. We need unpredictable allies, Yilthan concluded, in a private report to the Council leadership. Our peaceful nature has made us predictable. The Nexari calculate our responses because we always choose the most logical, least violent option. The suggestion was revolutionary and terrifying. The galaxy had achieved peace by eliminating unpredictable elements. Aggressive species were contained or reformed. Chaotic influences were removed. The Council had built a stable, logical civilization that prized order above all else. But that same predictability was now destroying them. The Nexari thrived against logical opponents who followed established patterns. Every Council species fought according to their nature and traditions, making them easy to calculate and counter. As worlds fell one after another, some council members began to remember the quarantined species they had locked away over the centuries. Violent, unpredictable races that had been deemed too dangerous for galactic society. For the first time in 1,000 years, chaos seemed preferable to extinction. Thexval rejected the idea immediately when it was first proposed. "We cannot unleash the very forces we have worked so hard to contain," he insisted. "The cure would be worse than the disease." But the disease was proving fatal. The Nexari advance continued relentlessly toward the galaxy's core worlds. Every defensive line collapsed within days. Every weapon system was turned against its creators. Every strategy was anticipated and countered before it could be implemented. Admiral Kethamore lost his homeworld 3 months after the war began. He watched from orbit as Nexari machines systematically harvested every crystal formation on the planet's surface. The living cities of his people, grown over millions of years, were reduced to raw materials in a matter of hours. "They don't just defeat us," Kethamore reported in his final transmission from the doomed world. "They erase us. Every trace of our civilization becomes fuel for their expansion." Dr. Yilthan's analysis became more desperate with each passing day. The Nexari weren't just winning the war, they were rewriting the rules of warfare itself. Traditional. Military doctrine was useless against an enemy that learned faster than its opponents could adapt. "We need something they cannot predict," Yilthan insisted in the emergency sessions that now occurred daily. "We need allies who fight without logic, who embrace chaos over order." The debate raged in the council chambers while the galaxy burned around them. Some members still believed their peaceful principles would somehow save them. Others argued for desperate measures that would betray everything the council represented. As the Nexari fleets approached the core worlds, time was running out for a decision that could save or damn the galaxy. Carl Watson stared at the quantum equations covering every surface of his laboratory, his coffee long since gone cold in his hands. The engineer had been working on the barrier problem for 3 straight days, sustained only by determination, and the certainty that humanity's prison had a key somewhere in its mathematical structure, the recursion pattern. Watson muttered to himself, suddenly seeing what had been hidden in plain sight. "It's not just containing us, it's talking to itself." The barrier wasn't a simple wall, but a complex communication network, constantly adjusting its parameters based on feedback from monitoring stations. Dr. Turner rushed to Watson's lab when the call came in. He found the engineer surrounded by holographic displays showing the barrier's internal structure in ways they had never seen before. The energy patterns were beautiful and terrifying, like watching the thoughts of an alien mind made visible. "We can crack it," Watson explained excitedly. "The barrier uses recursive algorithms to maintain stability, but recursion has vulnerabilities. If we can introduce the right kind of interference pattern, we can create a feedback loop that forces it to open small gaps." Commander Brooks received the breakthrough data in her communication center and immediately understood its implications. For the first time in 50 years, humanity might be able to reach beyond their solar system. But the first thing they detected when Brooks activated the modified receivers was not what anyone expected. The galaxy was screaming. Emergency transmissions flooded through the barrier's weakened sections, carrying reports of worlds under attack, fleets destroyed, and entire civilizations wiped from existence. The peaceful galaxy that had quarantined humanity was being systematically conquered by something called the Nexari Empire. Captain Morrison stood on the bridge of his flagship as the intelligence reports poured in. The intercepted transmissions painted a picture of technological superiority that dwarfed anything in human experience. The Nexari were machine intelligences that adapted to every weapon and tactic their enemies used. "They're losing," Morrison said grimly to his officers. "The entire galactic civilization is being crushed by an enemy they can't fight effectively." The irony was not lost on him. The aliens who had feared human violence were being destroyed by something far more dangerous, Admiral Peter Cole, now leading Earth's unified military forces, faced the most difficult decision in human history. The emergency session of the Global Council had been debating for hours, but the choice came down to a simple question. Should humanity help the aliens? Who had imprisoned them? Dr. Ellen Price had spent weeks analyzing the Nexari technology from intercepted signals. Her conclusions were sobering. "They're more advanced than us," she admitted to the Council. "Their adaptive capabilities are beyond anything we've developed. But they have one weakness." "What weakness?" Cole asked, leaning forward in his chair. "They're perfectly logical," Price explained. "Every adaptation they make is based on mathematical optimization. They calculate the most efficient response to every threat, but mathematics can't predict pure chaos." The Global Council voted by the narrowest margin in its history. Humanity would attempt to contact the Galactic Council and offer assistance. The decision was partly moral, partly pragmatic, and partly driven by a desire to prove that humans deserved freedom. Dr. Turner's team worked around the clock to build a quantum communication array powerful enough to penetrate the barrier completely. Using Watson's recursive interference patterns, they created a transmission system that could reach the galaxy's core worlds. The message was crafted carefully by Earth's best linguists and diplomats. It needed to convey humanity's knowledge of the Nexari threat, while demonstrating that humans had evolved beyond the violent species the Council remembered. After dozens of drafts, the final version was elegantly simple. "This is the United Earth. Federation calling the Galactic Council. We know about the Nexari Empire. We know your fleets are losing. We have studied your enemy through intercepted transmissions. We believe we can help you win this war. We want to talk." The transmission burst through the barrier at maximum power, carrying humanity's first official words to the galaxy in 50 years. On Earth, billions of people watched their screens as the message raced toward the galactic core at faster-than-light speeds. The response came within hours, but it wasn't what anyone expected. Instead of words, the aliens sent a data package containing detailed intelligence about Nexari capabilities, fleet positions, and battle outcomes. The message was clear. If humans wanted to help, they needed to understand what they were facing. Commander. Brooks spent 3 days analyzing the alien data with her team. The scope of the Nexari advance was staggering. Hundreds of worlds had fallen in just months. The machine empire was expanding in all directions, consuming resources and converting captured technology to fuel further conquest. "Look at this pattern," Brooks told Turner as they studied battle reports from the fallen worlds. "The Nexari always win by predicting their enemies' responses. They analyze weapons, tactics, even individual commander personalities. They turn every strength into a weakness." Captain Morrison reviewed the tactical data with his fleet commanders. The alien military doctrine was completely different from human approaches. Council forces fought with precision and coordination, following established protocols that had kept peace for centuries. Against a logical enemy, their methods were perfectly effective. "But they're not fighting a logical enemy," Morrison observed. "They're fighting machines that calculate optimal responses to every move. Their predictability is getting them killed." Admiral, Cole authorized the next phase of contact when Earth's analysis was complete. The second message to the Galactic Council was more specific and more disturbing for the aliens who received it. "We have analyzed your enemy's capabilities. The Nexari defeat you because you fight logically. Your tactics are predictable. Your responses can be calculated. We fight differently. We embrace chaos and unpredictability. We can teach you to be illogical. We can help you win." The silence that followed lasted for days. On Earth, people waited anxiously for a response that would determine humanity's future. The aliens were clearly debating whether to trust the species they had imprisoned for being too dangerous. Dr. Price used the waiting time to refine Earth's defensive technologies. If the Council agreed to work with humanity, they would need weapons, and strategies that the Nexari couldn't easily counter. The key was creating systems that were intentionally inefficient, tactically unsound, and completely unpredictable. When the Council's response finally came, it was not a message, but an action. Long-range sensors detected a small fleet approaching the solar system's edge. The aliens were coming to Earth for the first time since the quarantine began. Admiral Cole ordered the Terran fleet to defensive positions while preparing for humanity's first face-to-face meeting with their former captors. After 50 years of isolation, humans and aliens would finally talk directly about their shared survival against an enemy that threatened everything both species had built. The joint human-alien operation began with Major Steve Phillips leading a strike team through the modified barrier for the first time in 50 years. His 12-person squad included the most unpredictable soldiers Earth could produce, individuals, chosen specifically for their ability to make decisions that defied logic and protocol. Phillips watched through his helmet display as they approached Nexari-occupied space in a captured alien transport. The Machine Empire's sensor networks were incredibly sophisticated, but they were designed to detect organized military forces following predictable flight patterns. A small group of humans flying randomly through space was something their algorithms struggled to classify. "Remember the mission parameters," Phillips told his team as they prepared for insertion. "We do everything wrong. We break every rule of special operations. We make choices that no rational commander would approve. The moment we start thinking logically, we become predictable." Captain Morrison commanded the defense of Kepler Station from his flagship, coordinating the largest combined fleet in galactic history. Human ships flew alongside Valdorian crystal vessels and Zephyrian swarm fighters, their formation intentionally chaotic and constantly changing. The Nexari approach had been detected hours ago, giving both sides time to prepare for the wars. "Decisive battle. All units, remember your assignments," Morrison broadcast to the mixed fleet. "Humans will engage in random attack patterns. Council forces will provide supporting fire and attempt to maintain some semblance of organization. Do not try to coordinate too closely. Confusion is our greatest weapon." Admiral Cole watched the tactical displays from Earth's command center, monitoring 3 separate fronts simultaneously. Phillips's infiltration team was gathering intelligence behind enemy lines, while Morrison's fleet prepared for the main assault. Meanwhile, ground forces were defending the last free worlds, using tactics that horrified traditional military observers. The breakthrough came when Phillips' team discovered the Nexari production facility on the dead world of Terminus 7. The massive complex stretched across the planet's surface, with thousands of machine units being assembled every hour. But more importantly, they found evidence of the Empire's origin in the facility's central data core. "Command, this is Phillips," the Major reported through quantum communication. "You need to see what we found down here. The Nexari weren't built by some unknown alien race. They were created by a species the Council quarantined 3,000 years ago." Dr. Turner received Phillips's data transmission in his laboratory aboard the command station. The implications were staggering and terrible. The Nexari Empire was the ultimate revenge of a quarantined species, their final act of defiance against the galactic order that had rejected them. The Corvani were isolated for excessive aggression, Turner read from the recovered files. They spent 1,000 years in quarantine before building the first Nexari units. The machines were programmed with one primary directive: destroy the Galactic Council and everything it represents. The battle for Kepler Station began with the largest Nexari fleet ever assembled dropping out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation. 3,000 machine vessels arranged themselves in geometrically precise attack patterns, their movements coordinated with mathematical perfection. Morrison's response was gloriously chaotic. Human ships broke formation immediately, accelerating in seemingly random directions while firing at targets that made no tactical sense. Council forces tried to maintain some organization while supporting the human assault with conventional weapons. The Nexari adaptation protocols engaged immediately, analyzing human attack patterns and preparing optimal responses. But every time their computers calculated a counter-strategy, the humans changed tactics completely. Ships that had been firing energy weapons switched to kinetic bombardment. Fighters that had been attacking in groups suddenly operated as individuals. Captain Lisa Hayes commanded a squadron of human interceptors that demonstrated the new doctrine perfectly. Her ships approached the enemy formation in a tight group, then suddenly scattered in 12 different directions while firing randomly into space. Most shots missed completely, but the few that hit struck Nexari vessels that had moved to intercept. Attacks from entirely different directions. This is insane, Hayes's wingman reported over the communication channel. We're wasting ammunition and fuel. Half our attacks are hitting empty space. Exactly, Hayes replied as she executed a maneuver that violated every principle of space combat. The Nexari calculated where we should be shooting. We're shooting where we shouldn't be instead. The tide of battle turned when the Nexari computers attempted to process the data from Phillips's infiltration mission. Major Phillips had planted a logic virus in the Terminus 7 data core, a piece of code designed by Carl Watson to exploit the recursive algorithms that powered Nexari thinking. The virus was elegantly simple. It asked the Nexari network to calculate the most illogical possible action in any given situation, then recommended taking that action for logical reasons. The paradox propagated through the machine intelligence faster than their programmers had anticipated. Nexari ships began making increasingly erratic decisions as their central coordination network struggled with the logical impossibility Watson had introduced. Perfectly synchronized fleets broke apart as individual vessels pursued contradictory objectives. Attack formations dissolved into chaos as ships received conflicting orders from compromised command systems. Admiral Cole watched the enemy fleet destroy itself from his command center, but he felt no satisfaction in the victory. The intelligence Phillips had recovered painted a terrifying picture of the galaxy's history. How many other species had the Council quarantined over the millennia? How many potential allies had been turned into enemies by fear and isolation? The final Nexari collapse came when their adaptive algorithms reached a breaking point, trying to counter human unpredictability. The machine intelligence that had conquered most of the galaxy simply stopped functioning, overwhelmed by the impossibility of calculating responses to genuinely chaotic opponents. Captain Morrison surveyed the battlefield as the last Nexari ships drifted powerless through space. The victory was complete, but the cost had been enormous. Both human and council forces had suffered heavy casualties, and entire worlds lay in ruins across the galaxy. All units, stand down, Morrison ordered. Prepare for rescue and recovery operations. The war is over. But the real war was just beginning. In the aftermath of victory, the fundamental structure of galactic civilization lay in ruins. The Galactic Council had been exposed as a system that created its own enemies through fear and prejudice. The galaxy needed new leadership and new principles. Admiral Cole found himself elected as the first Supreme Commander of the Terran Galactic Federation, a new organization that embraced diversity rather than fearing it. Dr. Turner was appointed to lead the Technological Integration Council, working to combine the knowledge of all species rather than containing dangerous ideas. The barrier around Earth remained, but its purpose changed completely. Instead of a prison, it became a memorial and a reminder. Pilgrims from across the galaxy came to study humanity's triumph over isolation, learning how adversity had forged strength rather than breaking spirit. Former council speaker Thexval, now serving as an advisor to human leadership, reflected on the lessons learned through catastrophe. We tried to create peace by eliminating chaos, he observed in his final public statement. Instead, we created stagnation that made us vulnerable to our own mistakes. Dr. Turner stood in his laboratory, now expanded to include researchers from dozens of species, and remembered his mentor's final words. Rodriguez had predicted that the galaxy would regret underestimating humanity, but even he couldn't have imagined how completely those words would prove true. The galaxy had paid the ultimate price for their silence. They learned that sometimes the cure for fear is exactly what you're most afraid of. Humanity's violence and unpredictability, the very traits that had led to their quarantine, became the salvation of galactic civilization. In the end, the species deemed too dangerous for peaceful society became its protector. The qualities that had frightened the Council proved to be exactly what the galaxy needed to survive. And in the ruins of the old order, a new civilization emerged that understood the value of controlled chaos in an unpredictable universe.